fundamentally, children are treated much the same way as adults in the criminal justice system. They're tried in the same courts, they're taken before the same magistrates. The age of criminal responsibility in the Victorian period is 7. So by contrast, in Britain today it's 10. Although there is an understanding that up to the age of 14, we need to be clear that they understand that what they're doing is wrong if we're really going to punish them, you know, and hold them to account for it. So it's a kind of 7 but effectively 14. So if I take the most extreme punishment, which is hanging, children as young as 14, 15 were hanged in the Victorian period, but it's very, very rare. There are a lot of 17-year-olds and some 16-year-olds that are hanged, and it's invariably for those sorts of offences, the most serious offences. But it's more likely that being a teenager, being a young person will mean that even if you are prosecuted and found guilty of something, the most severe punishment won't be given to you because of your youth. It will be taken into consideration. You'll get a commuted sentence. When it comes to more general punishments, I mean, children can be and were given corporal punishment, so they would be flogged or given birch strokes, and that was usually administered by the police sergeant. And sometimes you get reports of, you know, a juvenile that's gone before a magistrate has been given, you know, 12 stripes of the birch rod, and that's carried out by the policeman, and you can hear the screams and the wails, and that upsets the local community as well. So that's kind of interesting that we're already thinking about cruelty to children at that period, but that's perfectly okay. You can fine children, although of course that's probably going to be paid by their parents. They can be sent to prison. There is a purpose-built juvenile prison, Parkhurst Prison, which is on the Isle of Wight, which opens in 1838 for young people specifically. It closes for young people in 1852 because the system is so dreadful. Young people are held on hulks, so these are decommissioned naval vessels that are held, you know, like in the Thames at Woolwich or wherever, and they're held there until the 1860s, when we stopped sending people to Australia. They're transported. That's probably quite a good thing because they get taken out of their environment and get a new environment. That's not so bad. I suppose the big change is in the 1850s when a lady called Mary Carpenter campaigns to treat young juveniles differently, and it's called the Reformatory Movement, and she persuades Parliament to create reformatory schools where you can send young offenders to a reformatory school where they'll be treated differently, and they'll be educated. Unfortunately, Parliament being Parliament, it insists that they have to go to prison first, so they have to spend a few months in prison beforehand, so they don't escape prison altogether. And that prison will mostly be the same prison that you send anybody else to. And then a couple of years later, they create industrial schools, which are similar sorts of things, but for slightly older children. So the answer to the question is they could be punished in exactly the same ways as adults. And they're not separated out from that system until the 20th century, until after 1908 and the Children's Act, when we start to think about children a bit differently.